Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. And you might be wondering why my insanely expensive MTW-9 is on the bench. And if you haven't watched the video on this, I suggest you go and watch it because it's quite... You can have a laugh at me spending a ton of money on something that I didn't need to spend. But you know, it's a beautiful gun. I'm happy with it. But I've got some bits that have arrived, courtesy of High Pressure Airsoft here in the UK. And I've wanted some of these ever since they got announced, and no, I couldn't find anywhere on the web apart from like places in Hong Kong that had it in stock. Everyone was like pre-order, which, you know, fuck's sake. So it's the EPM mags for the Scorpion Evos, the ASG CZ ones, and I managed to get 6 of them. So these are probably predominantly what I'm going to be running the MTW-9 off. I bought another K2 Plus because that's going to be going on to the new MTW build that I talked about briefly in one of the last videos, which is this. So I love the K2s, especially the K2 Plus. Now I don't have a K2 Plus on this one because at the time I couldn't get one, so I might order another one and shove one of these on here as well. So the K2 is good, but the K2 Plus is just absolutely supreme. So I bought a bunch, as well as the grip, I bought a bunch of these EPM E9 magazines, 6 in total. These aren't cheap. What are they, like 25, £30 each? Cheap when it's compared to gas blowback mags, but I'm interested to see what these are like. Now, of course, as you can see, it's quite a bit longer. I can't remember if the real P mags are this long. I don't think they are from memory, but I could be wrong. But they are considerably longer than the normal ASG mags, as you'll see here. So you're talking maybe like an extra 30% in terms of length. These are 75 rounds. The EPMs, I've forgotten. I think they're like 110-ish. You have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure they're about the 100, 110 mark. So I thought I'd just shoot these on a little video because no one's actually done videos apart from PTS on these yet that I'm aware of. Now, these are not bad magazines at all. They tend to be very reliable. When I ran my Evo, I really didn't have to mess about with them whatsoever. But this, straight away in the hand, you can tell it's in another league compared to this, and rightly so because these are more expensive. But it's going to give me added capacity. You know, I might end up getting rid of these and just replacing them with these because they look better, they feel better. I'm hoping they feed just as good. And they go straight in to the MTW-9 series. And it is a little bit longer, so you have to take that into consideration. It's not as small form factor as the Evo mags, the normal CZ ones, but in my opinion, they just look far superior. And every magazine that, you know, PTS has released of this type up till now have been great news, and they perform very, very well. The latest, which I think is the EPM ones, was it, which was like an M4 Midcap that held about 250 rounds. And then I got into that whole debate whether a 250 round Midcap should be sort of called a high cap, because 250 rounds isn't a mid cap to me. A mid cap to me is anything up to like 150, but we're going to crack this open. We're going to take a look today, and we're going to compare it to the normal ASG Eva mags. Now, the first thing I did notice, which I wasn't a fan of, is the screws on the bottom. They just look very cheap, and why isn't that an Allen key? You know, surely that would be much better to have like a 2mm countersunk screw. We'll shove our normal Phillips screwdriver on here, and if you loosen that off, you'll see it slid out straight away. It did sound like something was loose, but I mean, in terms of disassembly, can you get much easier than that? Although something did just fall on the floor. It'll be one of the stoppers, it's fine. It's bright orange, so we'll be able to find it. So I'm just going to pull that one off so it doesn't go walkies. Looking on the floor for it, it actually dropped on here, so it's all safe, good to go. Just note that the casings hold the stoppers in place, so just bear that in mind. But you know, fairly easy disassembly. The casing slides in, you've got one screw on the bottom. Now it'd be interesting to see how strong these casings are, because as you know as well as I do, if you've ran magazines like this in the past, a lot of manufacturers, they tend to crack here. But I'm loving the colour scheme with the EPM ones. You've got the anti-mac detection, so that's going to work for your Evo or your MTW-9. I love how it's clear. I'm not sure if anything sort of co-witnesses with this mark here. It just says F, so I imagine when the orange follows here, that means full, maybe. We'll have to test that in just a moment. So they've got two stoppers here. I love the fact that they've made these parts bright orange, because, you know, even though we don't run black BBs, you know, let's say it's dark or you're dimly lit, these magazines, everything being black, it's just not as easy to see, is it? But clear casing, fan of that. Orange stoppers, I'm also a massive fan of that as well. So we'll just put these parts back in here. It's very simple indeed. We just slide the two halves of the stoppers in there, and then we've got these springs. So I believe they go like that. So we've got one in. And if you can see here, the longer part goes towards the inner of the magazine. That makes sense in my mind. Just going to slide this back in here. No, I'm not. I'm going to drop it. They are very finicky. I was you know, really curious to see the inside of the casing. That's all. So let's quickly pop this back together so we don't lose those parts, like so. The inner part has just twisted slightly, but we could just pop that back in with a screwdriver. So in terms of like pulling them apart, one screw, dead easy. I'll be interested to see if these work loose over time, because it wasn't very tight when I pulled that apart. It'd be interesting to see the lifespan of the casing, because you know, as you tighten that up, it's going to squeeze the two together at the bottom there. But also the great thing about this is, let's say you have a problem with the magazine, you pop the screw out. You do need to keep an eye on those, so perhaps just loosen them off in your hands. You take the casing out, the casing's clear, you can see where there's an issue. Now with the Evo, ASG Evo magazines, now it has been a hell of a long time since I've took one of these apart, so you have to bear with me. But we just push the cap off the bottom there, and we have a pin. So we can push that pin out. I literally bought a brand new pin punch set the other day because I was sick and tired of like looking for them. And of course it's not on the bench yet, it's downstairs. So we'll pop that out. Going to use some pliers. If I see any, which I can't, we'll just use these grips, that's fine. All I'm doing is pulling that pin out there. So we're just going to grab the pin and we're going to pull the pin out. So already it's a lot more finicky compared to the EPM. Finger each side on the BB retainers, and then doing that we can just pull the casing out and it explodes. So you can see where I'm getting at with these, and although that won't look planned, I did do that on purpose, because now your magazine spat itself out everywhere. We've got the follower, we've got the parts, we've got the spring here, we've got the two springs for the BB stoppers, but how much of a pain in the ass is that? If that doesn't depict how much of a pain these magazines are to get in and out, I don't know how else I can get that across to you. So yeah, it's a massive pain. Parts have shot all over the place. I'm not sure where the 2 levers went. Probably on the floor. So let me just find those bits and I'll get back to my point. So I found those parts, they were just on the floor there, but yeah, how much of an arse is that? So we're just going to pop those back together. And for those unexpecting people that aren't used to the magazines doing that, maybe you are used to the magazines doing that and literally you've took them apart many times and that's always what happens. There's no screws in the casing, so it's literally held together by the outer shell. Now, yes, cheaper to manufacture that way, you're not having to supply hardware for the magazine, but taking them apart, you've got to just be very careful that your magazine doesn't grenade when you pull it out. And you can see here I'm trying to hold the casing together while putting this back in, which is a task in itself. Now what you could do is just part slide it in like that, and then we can put the magazine spring back in. But already you'll see how much of a pain this is. So yeah, I'm probably sounding like a bit of a broken record right now, but if you own an Evo and you've owned an Evo for a while and you haven't done this, then hats off to you. I mean, I've never had a problem with Evo magazines in terms of reliability, but you know, we've all been there when we've been to a game day and perhaps you're crawling around on the floor and you've got a lot of dirt in your magazines and you need to clean them, or you should clean them. And you can see how much of a pain it is to get this spring back in. So we can push that back in like so. That does hold itself in there, and then we just slide it back down. We could put the BB stoppers back in. Like so, 1 and 2. Everything's black in colour, so it's not super vibrant like the EPM. This might be the longest video I've ever done on a magazine. So just holding this in place, we need to get the springs in like before, but because you're worried about it grenading itself, it's not as confidence inspiring as the EPM. I do apologise if I've been out of shot at any moment. I'm just trying to pay attention to what I'm doing here. So we can put the magazine back together. Magazine's back together, you push the pin in on the bottom like that. We can tap the pin back into place. If it wants to line up, there we go. And there we go, there's your CZ magazine back together. And again, just to reiterate, with the EPM, 1 screw. I mean, yes, you don't need tools to do this. You will need tools to put it back together to make your life easier. But 1 screw, I've pulled the casing out. It doesn't grenade on itself. I'm holding the BB retention tabs in place. If I wanted to let them go, I can do. I can just let the springs drop out, let the stoppers drop out, and then with this magazine, it's all held together. We can take a little tool, and like with their other magazines, you can pop the spring retainer out the side and out pops the spring. Now, putting this back together is, you'll see already, so much easier than the ASG mag. I'm going to mess this up now I've said that. And we literally, sometimes it might be easier if you just use a tool just to push it in. I've got quite fat fingers, so it's hard for me to be that dexterous to put it in there. Slide it into a point, slide the spring retainer on, and that goes back into the magazine, and it's not popping open because it is screwed together. Good stuff. So the BB retainer latches in, and I've just pushed that back into the casing. Let's make sure they work okay. Seems like they do. One screw, the job's good, and that's, I promise that's the final time I'll talk about field stripping these things. Another thing to mention is if you look at the clips here, you'll see you've got a much bigger divot to get a fingernail in there for like when you want to strip the mags out, or whether you want to pull a BB out the top, emptying your magazines. I just find it easier to get my fingernails in the ones on the EPM. I'm not going to do it. Then on the Evo, you've got slightly smaller little notches there, and it is not as much of a grasp compared to the EPM. So fill in these magazines, ASG, full, and the EPM. Top up on the speed loader here. This is still a speed loader that I'm just having some fun testing. The Lilac speed loader, it seems to work really well so far. It does load in more BBs per plunge. And there we go, it's full. So you can fill it all the way up to the top without having to sort of it get really taxing on your hands. You can see there's a BB in there, so it's white. You might not see that, but I imagine that means full. It would be nice, in my opinion, if we had a slightly bigger follower, a slightly bigger window, or something like on the EPMs where you've got that indicator that goes down to show you when you're empty. That would have been nice on such a premium product, but you know, it's neither here or there. You can fill it all the way to full very easily enough. I would pull the casing out with it full, but the BBs will shoot everywhere, and I don't fancy rolling the dice on that one. So there is the EPM E9. Hopefully I've shown you something that you might be looking for that you can't find anywhere else in any other video. Apologies if this video is far too long for what you signed up for. Let's try emptying them now. So Evo ASG mag, completely missed the bottle, and the EPM mag. Oh, still more in there. It's hard to do whilst trying to look at the camera and miss the bottle again. Doesn't matter, BBs are cheap. They're all on the floor. So there you have it. I don't have an Evo to show you what it looks like. I would like to build another Evo, maybe like a HPA one. ASG mag, and of course EPM mag. So much longer, but much better looking. Quality in the hand feels much better. They've used much better materials. The design's nicer. You've got, again, I didn't mention it, but you've got dot matrix, so you can put your initials, number, call sign, whatever you want on there to identify your mags. That's good. You should always number your mags if you can, because let's say out on the field you have a mag that doesn't feed. If your mags are all like this, then you don't really know. I mean, you could do the same on these. You don't have to have the dot matrix. You could just write on the side. So you could have label them 1 to 6. If you have a mag out in the field that just isn't loading or isn't feeding, you can look at the number, go, right, number 5, for example, is a problem. Put that way in your kit, run the rest of your mags, and then you can identify where the issue is, clear the blockage. Might be a bit dirt in there maybe or something. So I really like this product. I'll be using them. There's a little bit higher feed on the follower there. I'll be testing them soon. Won't be doing this video because it's already long enough. And thanks for tuning in. Any questions on this magazine, pop it down in the comments below and I'll try and get it in for a future video if it requires it. As always, from me and Bench, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.